Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Aparutade sangama tassatawara ye sodavanta bamunjantu satang. So this afternoon, reflecting on this human experience that we're all having, and again I want to remind you, reflecting is just being the witness, the observer, rather than taking everything personally. So the subject of death is quite an important reflection, because these forms sitting here in this temple at this time will eventually die. And we've all had experience of loss of parents, loved ones, friends, pets who we've loved and who've passed away. They've died. And just the word death can be rather ominous word, and in polite society it's not a subject generally discussed or mentioned, because it means the end of what we tend to be very strongly identified with. And that leaves us, what happens when we die, when someone else dies, what happens to them? And there's various scenarios about souls going to various stages of heaven, hell, or just being non-existent, completely disappearing. But at this moment, death for all of us, in terms of the body, this is the experience of life or being. And it's like this. So death is something that we truly realize, all of us, that we are going to die, but that's in the future. So the future for this moment, for all of us, is death will happen sometime in the future. And then the here and now is like this. This is the experience of being conscious. And so consciousness, does it die? You know, this is a big question, and there are many arguments about the deathless, the immortality, what doesn't die, or is death the final end of absolute everything? And the reality of here and now for all of us, we don't know. So we're experiencing this not knowing is like this. None of us know what will happen when we die. We can have various beliefs, but beliefs are words, concepts that arise and cease in the present moment. So be at ease with just the ultimate reality of not knowing this moment in regards to one's physical death, not knowing what it's like or what happens. Then what doesn't die? And so then does consciousness die? And in the teaching of the five khandhas, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, Vijnana, the senses, that we experience consciousness through the senses, they die, definitely. So when, they can die before the body dies. The eyes, we go blind, deaf, lose our sense of smell, taste, touch. So sensory consciousness is related, like the vijnana taught in terms of the five khandhas, related to the body, to the rupa, the kaya, the physical form, which has these sense organs that we experience consciousness to. So consciousness to most people is what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, feel through the body, through the senses. And that is the real world for most human beings, is the world that they experience through their physical bodies, through their senses. But then in my introductory quote, the gate to the deathless is open. And so this word deathless is very prominent in the suttas, the scriptures of Buddhism. So then we try to imagine, well, what is the deathless? If the gate to the deathless is open, what does that mean? And what is the deathless? How can we escape death through realizing the deathless? So we see it in these ways of thinking, logic and reason, according to the way we've been conditioned and educated, and we try to figure out what the deathless is. But words cannot lead you to that. The best they can do is use the word death and less, what doesn't die. And then in the Dhammapada, one of my favorite verses is Apamado Amatabadang. Mindfulness is the way to the deathless. Pamado matunopadang, and heedlessness is the way to death. So Luang Por Chah used to emphasize that we're dying all the time because the conditions of thought are very brief, the thinking, words that we think, the concepts that we cling to, the perceptions we have through the senses are very transitory. They're changing all the time. So when we try to think of I am going to die, then that is the conventional way of thinking about the physical body, about oneself. And then we tend to take that very personally because that's what we really identify with, is the physical bodies. So then I encourage you to ask yourselves, am I really this body? Is this what I really am, this physical form? This male body? Am I really a male body or a female body? Are these my true nature? How can these realize the deathless? How can a feminine body not die, or a male body not die? And so these are like investigatory questions to reflect upon what doesn't die in terms of the reality of here and now. And then we get to the quote, apparent here and now, santitiko Dhamma. Apparent here and now is conscious awareness. So mindfulness is the way to the deathless. Heedlessness is the way to death. So heedlessness means being caught in the ignorance of identity with the physical body and your thoughts and memories, with what you see, hear, smell, taste, touch, what you believe, what you cling to, what you've been conditioned to believe or cling to. Cultural identities, racial identities, gender identities, all these are identities that we can totally believe in, because the societies we live in tend to reinforce these kind of illusions. So appamado amattapadang, the mindfulness is the path to the deathless. Pamado machanopadang, heedlessness is the way to death. Appamado namayanti, mindfulness is never, conscious awareness is never dying. Pramado machanopadang, and heedlessness is dying all the time. So this is not a doctrine. I'm not trying to ask you to believe this, but as a reminder to reflect. Am I really this limited form? Is this my true nature? And this is important to ask yourself, to investigate, because ultimately we're not these forms. These forms were born, they grow up, they get old, and then they die. That's the nature of phenomena. So all phenomena has the same nature, well, like a thought is a phenomenon. So it has a beginning and end. How long can you hold to one thought? You know, they pass very quickly. And thinking then leaves kind of emotional feelings arise through what you think or what you hear. So somebody says, you're a very wonderful person, and you hear these words, they come and go very quickly, but then what's left is an emotion of feeling happy and honored and good about being praised and admired. And the next moment somebody will come along and say, you're absolutely hopeless, stupid person, can't stand you. And then these are words that come and go very quickly, but then they affect you personally, and you feel depressed or angry as a result of what you hear. And so we're subject to, this is the information age where there's so much discussion of who I really am and my rights, human rights, and all kinds of strange identities that didn't exist 50 years ago, and rights and privileges that we demand personally. We have yesterday I spent a whole day talking about rights and about politics around the world, and how democracy is under threat, and all kinds of ominous discussions that you pick up in the news media and through worldly discussions, and that leaves an impression on the mind. It's very negative and rather scary. Gloomy predictions of the end of democracy. For some people that might seem like a good thing, and others are conditioned to be very pro-democracy. But what is the word democracy but another phenomenon? It's just a word that's created by human beings. It's not created by the gods or God or Buddha or anything. It's just a nice word that we've inherited in our vocabulary, and we believe, and we may not even know what it really means. It's part of a cultural conditioning. So this is observing how things affect you in the community and monastic communities. Then we're subject to being criticized, being admired, being praised, being ignored, being misunderstood. All these are part of community life. When you're living with other people, the demand that they respect you and understand you is an understandable demand, but that's impossible. How can we really understand each other in the way that we want as a person? I want to be respected for my true nature, for what I am. But what is my true nature that I expect you or want you to respect? So this is, we have these demands, expectations, we become disillusioned, disappointed in a lifetime. And all this is part of the world, the sankhara, the phenomena that we experience through the senses, through the brain, through the mind, through the body. And that's what life is about. It's about peace and war and peace, happiness and suffering, birth and death. But the amattapadang, the deathless path, the path to the deathless, is that something I can realize personally? Can Ajahn Sumedho realize the deathless as a person? I've been a monk for many decades now. And as long as I identify myself as a person, as long as I hold to this identity, I'm this body, I'm this personality, I am this Ajahn Sumedho, as what I cling to and believe in and want you to respect and treat nicely, with reverence and appreciation. The ego wants all that, and then feeling threatened when being criticized, disparaged. Or can Ajahn Sumedho realize the deathless as a person? And through investigating this position of Ajahn Sumedho, through just observing that this title was given to me by somebody else, I didn't choose it. And I wasn't always Ajahn Sumedho. And the words themselves come and go very quickly. I can't sustain, it's not like a mantra I want to keep thinking all the time or chanting Ajahn Sumedho all the time. But it comes and goes very quickly. And when it's gone, then there's no Ajahn Sumedho. It's just a convention, an illusory phenomenon, a convention, is part of this tradition, the Thai forest tradition. So when we talk about the deathless, the Amattapadang, words, they have the words Amattapadang in Pali, the path to the deathless, the way to the deathless. What is that? And is Dhamma, this word, this Pali word, Pali Sanskrit word Dhamma, that we use in this tradition, Pali Theravada tradition, what is that anyway? As I've given many reflections on this word, because like this morning we listened to the Patimokkha recitation, giving the precepts to the Anagarikas about taking refuge in the Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. This is ceremony. These are all words. They're empty, phenomenal words. But we have our own interpretation. We say, would you define Dhamma for me, Ajahn Sumedho? And I say, it's an absolute reality, ultimate truth. But these are more words, English words, trying to explain this Pali word. So how can words ever get us anywhere but through, dealing with the experiences we have in this form? We live in a society that is based on conventions, on beliefs, on traditions. And so the conditioning process is something we acquire. You're not born as an English person or a Thai or any other nationality, or a black or white person. You don't, a newborn infant doesn't see itself in terms of the color of its skin or its religious tradition. It's acquired knowledge that's given to you when you're innocent. You don't even ask for it. You just get it from what in the conditions after birth. You acquire all kinds of names and titles, beliefs, and those acquisitions, they have a beginning and end. This is the Pali word sankhara, or phenomena, something that is created. So is consciousness created? You didn't ask to be conscious. It's just the natural, uncreated reality that we experience, the conditioned realm through these bodies, through these senses. So this way of reflecting is very, is the kind of gift we have in this tradition. In this particular style of Thai forest meditation, as we received it from Luang Por Chah in Thailand. The way of reflecting on the experiences that we're having with wisdom, rather than with just belief, becoming Buddhists, identifying with our position, bhikkhus, siladharas, anagarikas, lay people. And these are conventions that we give a lot of importance to and identify with. But just identifying with Buddhist conventions is still not the way to the deathless. You can become a good Buddhist, quote unquote, through belief, through clinging to Buddhist ideas, Buddhist teachings, Buddhist conventions, believing totally in Buddhism and that. But when you examine the suttas in the Tripitaka, such as the Four Noble Truths, the whole point of that teaching is to investigate, to find out what you really are. It's not asking you, Buddha didn't teach Buddhism. You know, his teaching is not about Buddhism, it's about Dhamma, pointing to ultimate reality. The reality of conscious awareness here and now is the gate to the deathless, the door where we begin to realize the freedom, ultimate freedom that comes through being fully aware of the conditioning that we're experiencing as impermanent and not self, it's not personal. So dying every moment is what the world's doing. You know, it's people change. You can't help but be changeable in your emotional experiences through the senses. Just like a rainy, cold day is like this. And then in terms of personal response to cold, rainy, wet days is I don't like them, I want the sunshine. So we, you know, because the cold, rainy day is an experience that we're having through the senses, and we form, you know, preferences. We don't like it, we want warm, sunny days. But whatever reactions we have to the weather that we're experiencing through this form, we're aware of it. Like not wanting cold, wet days is like this. So it's not like asking us to always have, I like cold weather just the same as hot, sunny weather. It's not trying to prevaricate, lie to yourself and try to convince yourself that everything's equal and you're just content with the flow of life. As a person, is not pretending to be an arahant or an enlightened being. It's not about trying to act like one, but whatever character tendencies you have, whether they're wholesome or not, is not the point. It's being aware that whatever tendencies, the perceptions, beliefs, attachments, that you've been conditioned by, you're aware of them. As they arise, they cease. All conditions are impermanent, and Dhamma, ultimate reality, is not personal, is not self. So when you realize this, then death is nothing to dread. You know, it's kind of a relief. An old body is not a very, you know, happy place to be. And yesterday somebody wished me to live to 120, and it's all, you know, that's, I don't know whether that's a compliment or a curse, but, you know, I think of it, at 89, it's like this, and it's going to get more difficult. You can witness the fading out of the sankharas, of the senses. The aging process of a human body is like this. But is this body really me? Is that my true nature? Is that what I've been a monk for all these years, trying to convince myself that I'm perfectly, you know, that I'm this Buddhist monk, this bhikkhu following, I'm a good Buddhist. Or maybe I think, well, I've wasted my life, I haven't reached enlightenment. Or you might even convince yourself you're enlightened as a person. But as a person, nobody's enlightened. It's when you get beyond this belief, you are this body, these senses, these memories, these thoughts, these emotions, that you realize your true nature is apparent here and now, timeless, deathless. And that's anatta, not self. It's not personal. It's what we all can realize through this sati sampajanya, through mindfulness, through wisely reflecting on experience and letting go of it. Releasing your habitual grasping of perceptions and identities. It doesn't mean you get rid of them. It doesn't mean you destroy anything. It's not a destructive practice, but a practice of contentment, relaxation, observing, and learning from experiences you personally experience life, your relationships in the Sangha are like this. Good or pleasant, unpleasant, neither pleasant nor unpleasant, it's like this. So freedom, ultimate freedom, enlightenment, the deathless reality is through this gate, through this door, the amattapadang, the deathless reality of here and now, through breaking down the illusions that we've been conditioned by, such as the ego, such as social, conventional conditioning, such as the language that we think in, that we hold to and cling to, believing that we can solve the problems of the world through thoughts, through ideals. We can have meetings, endless meetings, to discuss our feelings. And we want you to listen to me so I can discuss my feelings with you. And through that kind of experience, we hope to find peace and contentment, or do we? Can we really find peace and contentment through endless discussions about peace and contentment and rights and personal feelings and reactions to experience? Or through using wisdom to realize whatever we feel, experience, is impermanent and not self. So it's very, I really encourage you to do this, because it is available here. It's the whole point of Amaravati, really, of this monastery, the branch monasteries, is to give this encouragement, not to recondition you into samanas, into becoming Buddhists. It's not about trying to, convert you to anything, We're not here to convert you to becoming Buddhist. Because it's the Four Noble Truths about becoming a Buddhist, or through understanding suffering, which is the common bond that we share with all creatures. This realm that we experience through this form is the experience of suffering. And so, looking for permanent happiness through the form, sometimes we are happy when everything is what we want. But you can't sustain that kind of happiness. It's easily damaged, easily destroyed. So what is it like to be deathless, to realize the deathless? And there's no word for it. Your mind goes blank. The thinking mind can't, you can words like it's peace, it's peaceful, not being anybody or anything at all. It's very peaceful. When you become somebody, then that's not so peaceful, because you have to perform, you have to please, you have to live in a society and conform to the laws and rules, regulations, precepts that we have been conditioned by. And that can be stressful. So we can feel guilty very easily, personally. If we said something stupid, we can feel guilty, embarrassed. Because personally, we want to sound intelligent and reasonable and right. We can be, in any religious danger of religion, generally speaking, is righteousness. Having to be right can hold to the sense of I'm right. Just observe, be the witness to this belief in your own rightness, your righteousness. Is it comfortable to be righteous? Do you feel happy and content? And, through my own reflection, I didn't find being righteous a very peaceful mental state for me to cling to. Naturally feels that, I'm right, and then somebody else says something else, and you're wrong, you're an enemy of Buddhism, you don't understand the Dhamma, I've got the right interpretation of the scriptures. And just by thinking those very thoughts and witnessing them, are those thoughts, I'm right, is that a very comfortable state to cling to? Because then anyone who doesn't agree with you is wrong, is evil, is bad, heretical. So in Christianity, they oftentimes quote the Bible all the time to justify their right views. And we can do the same by quoting scriptures. And we might have right interpretations of Pali scriptures, but they're still interpretations, they're still sankharas, where through insight, through meditation, through bhavana, we begin to realize this ultimate reality. And realize it means we know This is what our true nature is. We're not bound by words, bound by traditions, bound by forms. So in this tradition, monastic tradition, the Vinaya and the precepts and all that, they're conventions. And how do we use the convention? Why did the Buddha establish the Vinaya before he passed away? Why did he said there's the Dhamma and which is formless? Dhamma has no form, no quality. It's not red or blue. It's not about right and wrong, good or bad, heaven or hell. So when you try to figure out what Dhamma is, with words, you're stuck with the dualistic practices of thinking, which is always based on right and wrong, good and bad. We can't help it when we try to analyze and figure everything out no matter how intelligent and how well educated one might be. We're stuck in a helpless place with just trying to be logical or reasonable, sensible. And identifying with the idea that I'm very reasonable. I've studied all these great philosophers, the great teachings. And this can be, quite a nice gift in a worldly way, but it is not enlightenment. It's not knowing your true nature, it's believing in the power of words, of right and wrong, good and bad. So when we get to the word Dhamma, is it right or wrong, good or bad? And according to Buddhists, is right and is good. So then we talk about Buddhism, Theravada Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Mahayana Buddhism, Tibetan Buddhism, Vajrayana Buddhism. Are these all right? Or are some wrong? Or are some more right than others? And we get, we take positions, we try to be generous, they're all right and good. But we're still trapped in this extreme identity with goodness. Is Dhamma right or wrong, good or bad? And you let go of these words, and there's silence, which is neither good or bad, right or wrong. It's like this. Conscious awareness, the door to the deathless. So on worldly terms, we encourage generosity as a way to live in the world, not be selfish. We call it dana, not to be selfish and mean-hearted. Be generous is a way to being happy in the world. But it's not permanent happiness, it's momentary happiness that we get through generosity. Sila, the 5 precepts that we encourage for lay people, is a way of living a good life in these forms, as a man or woman. In any society, be good is like this, and be generous, you're much more prone to being happy and contented than when you're just selfish and corrupt. So in terms of dana sila, these are very important teachings to give to people to kind of encourage them towards bhavana or meditation, establishing a foundation in this form, in the world that we have to live in the families, the societies that we're members of, to be generous, to be responsible for our action and speech, sila. Then the encouragement of bhavana. And not many people are interested in meditation because worldly conditioning is very wanting to attain power, prestige, to always get something, get more, be praised, being honored, being respected, getting wealthy, rich, having important social status, and on like that are worldly ambitions that make us not very generous as we think of ourselves. Even our generosity can be very based on acquiring more merit, and so we can feel more at ease about our way we make a living, the power that we have. So we can turn dana and sila into something that makes us more, can lead to keep deluding ourselves till we practice meditation, bhavana, and start investigating experience and seeing for ourselves, realizing Dhamma is what you really are, the deathless reality that we're experiencing, or we're not experiencing, we're the very being of here and now is the door to the deathless. So I offer this as a reflection.